And now, Minion Works presents Freelance Heroism.
Hey freelancers, welcome back to Freelance Heroism. In today's episode of Freelance Reviews, Rachel and I interview a few people involved in the ongoing Charmed and Dangerous Kickstarter campaign by Third World Studios. We talked with project manager David, Rob the designer, and Sorah the contributing artist.
Charmed and Dangerous is a cooperative adventure card game for 1 to 4 people designed as an RPG-style adventure. You and your friends each pick a fairy tale princess to play as and battle against wicked villainesses and their forces of evil. It's appropriate for ages 13 and up.
Enjoy the interview, and if you're interested in Charmed and Dangerous, you can find a link to the Kickstarter in the show notes.
I'll try not to be gross.
Yeah, I know how gross you can be. I know how you be gross.
Yeah.
You like the gross stuff. Talking about butts and whatnot. Hey, David.
Hello.
Hey guys,
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? I've got Rob Gallerani with me.
Okay, cool.
Hi.
Okay, I'm gonna forward the link to Sorah. She's closing down her Kickstarter, so she's gonna join us a little later.
Okay.
Okay.
You
All
guys
right.
want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and let the listeners kind of know who you are and what you do?
Oh, sure. Rob, why don't you go first while I send this?
Sure. I'm Rob Gallerani. I designed the card game, but before card games, I've been working in video games for, I think this is my 19th year.
Yeah.
Started with doing handheld games, Tony Hawk stuff, all the way through Guitar Heroes and Swap Forces and Destinies. And if anyone likes Destiny 2 and likes puzzles and ciphers, I made those. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, cool.
So I'm David Rodriguez, and I was the project manager for the game, where I worked on the initial idea and then kind of got the team together and then helped just kind of run getting it all put together and assembled and worked on the theming. Got Sorah and Renee on board and that sort of thing, and worked with them just on a lot of the world building for the game, and then worked with Rob on like the final polish and design and things like that before we got it out.
Fantastic.
Cool. Okay.
So, do you guys mind telling us a little bit about what the game is? We know that it's sort of an adventure game, but we want to hear maybe from the people who were instrumental in its creation to tell us the style of game that you're hoping, the type of feel you want the game to create.
Go ahead, Rob.
All right. So one of the things that we wanted to kind of come through is a lot of times you'll get games where there are different characters or different avatars you can play. And really the only difference between them is stats, right? So from a designer point of view, you would design some type of system, and then you'd say, okay, well, we'll just make this one have more strength and this one have more magic power, or whatever that means, right? One of the things that we kind of really wanted was we actually wanted the style of play and the way that you play to match the theme that we were going for. So for example, we can talk about some of the rules and how the game works, right?
Yeah.
So one of the villainesses is the Candy Witch from Hansel and Gretel. And so in that myth, right, she's this crazy old lady who likes to put kids in cages and eat them. So the mechanic for how she works is, like all villainesses in the game, she kind of stays hidden until there's a trigger. Well, the trigger in this scenario is if you have too many cards in your hand, if you reach a certain card limit. And so essentially now you've been fattened up and you get thrown in a cage. And when you're in the cage, you can't do anything and you draw even more cards. And one of the lose conditions of the game is the draw pile is empty. And so essentially she's fattening you up. And so the way that people kind of try to avoid triggering her is you try to be skinny, right? So they try to draw as few cards as possible or always use stuff. And so while that's just a rule and it's just a mechanic, the idea is that you actually are playing with that style. And so like we get really kind of fun scenarios that tell a good story. So for example, with Briar Rose, the way that one of her powers is she's Sleeping Beauty, but we have her walk in the land of the dead when she goes to sleep.
Mhm.
And she basically gets to draw cards from the discard pile. And so instead of drawing cards from the normal, so it's kind of like, okay, you're undead now. You go check out all the cards that have been deceased. And so we've had games where she gets all the cards, she gets put in the cage, and then so she doesn't draw any cards. She puts herself to sleep. And so she's now basically drawing cards from the undead pile. And so it's a very interesting story, even though it's just a mechanic. So that was kind of one of the goals we had was we wanted a game that was cooperative and that was, balanced, but allowed us to continue to add a lot more princesses. But really, in the end, you're telling an interesting story about how the mechanics let you play out, right?
Mhm.
I'm a huge fan of the old school Magic the Gathering kind of graveyard recursion.
I
Yeah.
was just thinking about how that was like a black deck.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of the mechanics in there, like I like that Rob we took the princesses and tried to make they're all themed after an RPG style character. So in essence, it's really a RPG style dungeon crawl game because you have the grid and the backs of the cards are even themed where if you're fighting like the Dark Fairy, the backs of the cards are thorns because you're trying to get through the thorns to reach the villainess. If you're fighting the Candy Witch in her lair, then the back of it is a forest, and then her lair is the gingerbread cottage. And so when the lair is triggered, it shuffles the forest around. So cards that are face down that you used to know where they are, you don't know where they are anymore. So it kind of evokes that whole you're lost in the woods and you have to figure stuff out again. And so we just really tried to lean into the themes really heavily with all their powers and make sure that there's nothing on them that doesn't reflect the kind of character that they're supposed to be. And so the theming was very important to us.
Man, that sounds very cool.
Yeah.
I was looking at the art on the Kickstarter video, and I was just blown away. I was like, this is so, pardon my French, this is so fucking cool.
No, French it up. It's cool. It's awesome. Sorah was an integral part of the project. I met Sorah. We were on a panel together years ago at AwesomeCon because I write comics as well. I worked together with Rob on games, but I worked on comics, and that's where I met Sorah. And we were on a panel together and we just became friends right away. And we were kind of looking for a project to do together. And I saw some prints that she had of just kind of her own version of other princesses that she was selling. And I looked at it and I was like, she'll be perfect for this game. And then, so we talked about it and we brought her on board. And then she just started doing the designs of the characters. And
Speak of the devil, I think she just hopped on.
Oh, did she? Is Sorah here? I was saying nice things about her.
The name just popped up right as you were talking about it. I was like, she was summoned.
I was. Yeah. She just showed up.
So since you just got here, why don't you tell us a little bit about your part in the production of this?
I don't know what to say. Sorry, I'm having to switch mental gears very quickly.
So I was telling them how we met at the con and how I saw your original princess prints and how I knew you were perfect for this specific project. And we were looking for a project to do together.
Yes. So David approached me and we set up a very delicious lunch meeting at San Diego. When was that? I don't remember when that was.
That might have been three years ago by now.
Oh my God, was it really?
Yeah, I think so.
Things move slowly. Anyway, so a couple years ago, we set up that wonderful meeting and we talked about what exactly, he was looking for and, on a design aspect and the goal of the game. And I was like, well, I'm totally down for that. I absolutely loved the idea of, doing some cultural bending of the traditional fairy tales and even bringing in other cultural fairy tales that maybe, most of the Western, audience is not necessarily familiar with. And it just seemed like a really fun opportunity. And the thing that really sold me on it was when he explained to me how the currency in the game was going to be charmings. And I was like, what is charming? Is that like a tool? I didn't understand he meant like Prince Charming. It took a while for him to explain. And I was like, oh, that is brilliant. And I'm 1,000% on board because that's just funny. anyways, so on my end, it was, I tend to have a really basic female like model sheet that's just like a blank slate that I can sit there and do things like costume designing, and I don't really worry too much about how much they look like the person that I'm going to eventually draw, but it's most about costume design, so I can just sit there and erase. Right. Not have to worry about it. And so we went through a few iterations of that back and forth, which was a lot of fun. But mostly, I mean, David just let me go kind of wild with it. And, he was like, well, keep things clean. And I was like, okay.
PG-13, I think, was our goal.
Yeah. So it's like, we can't have too much decollage and whatever. So that's totally fine. So yeah, no, it was super fun to do. I love design aspects of characters. So the fact that I had like a blank slate to play on was super fun.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty freeing.
Yeah.
Whenever someone kind of gives you free range, it's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys tell us a little bit about who the target audience is for this game? Because I kind of get the impression that this is a game that can be played by both people of my age and also by the little girl who lives across the street, and sort of with the not lacking any sophistication as you play it. Does that make sense? Like, a game generally targeted for children is generally pretty simple. We're talking like Candyland and things like that. But as you get older, the games become more complex and more fulfilling for adults. This feels like maybe the sweet spot in between the two of those. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. And I think that was one of our goals. And I think Rob can speak to this too, because his wife and daughters were big play testers for the game. And for us, that's kind of what we wanted. Was there's not a lot of games that target gamer moms and their daughters, right? That are like, hey, this is a game where you can kind of see yourselves reflected in it, where instead of, most RPG games, there's maybe like one or maybe two female characters in the game. And in this one, like it's all female, like RPG adventurers. And so everybody kind of gets their favorite, but it's not so difficult to get into that you couldn't play it with like your younger kids and have that sort of family game experience. It's done in about half an hour. But maybe Rob, you want to talk more about that part with you?
Yeah. I mean, there's one of the things that a lot of times, at least as game designers, we get caught up on is the difference between like depth and complexity and how easy it is to learn or understand. And you can actually get some pretty in-depth stuff so long as you can get onboarded pretty quickly, right? Like if I was to hand my 6-year-old Civ 4, that's not going to happen, right? But it doesn't mean everything has to be Candyland. And so, first off, the fact that it's a cooperative game where really, if you want to play everything face up, that's perfectly fine. That automatically makes it far more accessible to people who are either new to the game who are younger, because you're all working together. There's no competition. You're kind of deciding as a team. I wanted to try to avoid kind of the quarterbacking that happens a lot. If you look at like Forbidden Island or stuff like that, where you just find one person who knows how to play it. And that's kind of solved because whenever a new princess or whenever a new foe card gets revealed, like there's a whole bunch of new questions, and they're really kind of small that just that player has to handle. And so it's easy to let people go with that. The iconography is pretty good. It's like, okay, you need this many diamonds to beat this one thing. So we tried to keep it very approachable. So like my daughter's 9 years old, and my youngest is 5. My youngest just likes it because it's cool pictures,
Right.
And so that was a blast for her. But my 9-year-old kind of gets what's going on and everything like that.
Didn't your mother-in-law play too?
Yep, my mother-in-law played it and everything like that. So, but I mean, really, we wanted it to be a really enjoyable game, win or lose, because it's actually a fairly challenging game. And so
that's sort of like the what you kind of notice from it is that it doesn't seem like it's too shallow, like the mechanics themselves, just the way you were describing them earlier, talking about there being like a value in the graveyard, a value in your hand,
Right.
Where you gain advantage from cards being in your hand, but when you lose them, it actually puts you in a better spot maybe for the end game. And I want to say sorry to everyone for saying the word end game, because I know that's become a problem. Hopefully by the time this comes out, people will have chilled about that.
Yeah.
But I really like that it doesn't seem shallow like that, but it is accessible. There are lots of games that are simple enough to learn the rules, but have a wealth of complexity. And that's interesting from a design aspect, that you're conscious of that when you're putting this together. Can I give you guys something that's pretty interesting? You guys' Kickstarter, when I went to get the current numbers, because I wanted to do it right before, was it 19,000 of 10, right? So you guys already got your Kickstarter,
Right.
and now you guys are just snowballing, right? Now, I wrote the number down, and as I went down to the next line to write a message to Rachel before we started, I looked back at it for a second, and it had gone up again. And I was like, oh, man, okay, so let me, and then it went up again while I was trying to write that number down. You guys are killing it right now.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that. You're telling us.
Yeah, we would be looking at the same thing, but the screen is maximized. So
For you, like,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, it's been a week of clock watching, but it's been really nice to see the reception and the comments and the people who are excited by the theme or excited by the character. Gretel is a superstar. Like
Gretel looks awesome. Yeah.
right, like she is winning so hard. Like right now, the number of crushes that are being announced on the internet for her is high. She has a high crush level. And thank you, Sorah. She's just gorgeous. We had a cosplayer show up.
Oh my gosh, she was so cool.
At C2E2. She was amazing. I think she just did a photo shoot, so hopefully when this comes out, you can check out her site. I believe it's at Viva Chameleon is the cosplayer who did it.
And we'll go ahead and include all those links and stuff in the notes for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Gretel has, what's cool about the game, like you were describing, is the way Rob set it up is that every princess you add to the game and every villainess you add in every lair, they all kind of just work together to make sure you're never really playing the same game. No matter, even if you have the exact same characters, the exact same foe deck, because of how they're shuffled, or because maybe you have a different time where you choose to use your power, because every princess has a super in addition to just her normal stats, right? Like we have to give them
princess
full powers. Yeah. But like Gretel's power is so simple. Like all she does is if she has enough charmings in her hand, she can fight forever. Like normally each princess can fight one guy and then they're out for that turn. But Gretel is a monster, so she can just keep discarding charmings. And she has completed like an entire grid before in one turn, which awesome, except then nobody can like power up. And so it actually makes it harder for the other players to like get equipment and items.
In one of the original games we were playtesting, someone was like, oh my good, like they had just gotten kind of a perfect setup and they literally wiped the whole board with Gretel and they were like, this is awesome, we're going to win. And we walked away and we came back and they actually ended up losing the game because that kind of screwed them, because none of the other princesses now they basically, like, she camped the spawn and killed everything so no one else could get anything.
She had all the loot and only one card would fill in at a time. And so
she's a resource hog.
So you have to use her. You can't be greedy with it.
And the side effect of us trying to design the princesses and the decks and the villainesses to actually have a unique mechanic is we wanted to keep the mechanic really, really simple. But when you mix and match them all together, that's when everything becomes really, really interesting, because you want there to be a lot of replay value. You want to be like, oh, well, we just played this. What if we swap out the villainess? What if we swap out the heroines we're playing?
Right. I mean, you figure if she's like a resource hound, right? She's pulling all of the resources in, then maybe a character that would require more resources would be a hindrance to both of their effectivenesses and changes the course of the game based on that. I really am excited about this, guys.
Yeah. It came out with some really fun strategies that were emergent. That's really what at least what I strive to see as a game designer. You don't want there to be one right answer, because then really the game is just telling you how to play. I love it when the people playing my games come up with ways to beat it that I didn't even think of, but because of the way the system works, it's all kind of balanced, right? So I think one of the scenarios was they learned that if you keep Gretel in the cage and let her get fat, she'll get like 20 cards in her hand, and then you spend one spell to break her out of the cage, and she literally just destroys everything. And you're kind of cutting it close, but you basically turn her into just a berserker. And we're like, okay, I guess that works. So
that's very cool.
That is really cool.
She's not getting fat. She's carb loading.
She's
Yeah,
she's
That's what
Carla.
it is. Well, guys, where can we find this game?
Currently, it is on Kickstarter. It'll be there probably through the end of May. I think we're ending our weekend at a convention. Yeah, DreamHack Dallas is where we end our Kickstarter. The game will be. We expect the game to be out for Gen Con. Like we have. One of the things that was important to me was let me make this clear. We need the Kickstarter. I'm going to preface with that. Like the Kickstarter was important, but I had a lot of faith in the game, and we've worked really hard in the game. And between Sorah's art and the design, I just really felt like this game needed to be out there. So we've already sent it into pre-press, which requires a deposit. And so I essentially placed a bet 6 weeks ago. I'm like, this is going to have to do well, or that's just my deposit gone. Like if we didn't do it, right? And so because I didn't want also people to be waiting a year for the game to come out, because like Sorah said, we've been working on this for almost 3 years. And I couldn't wait another season for it not to come out. So I was like, okay, guys, I believe in this. I put the deposit down, and today I feel much better because, as you said, the Kickstarter is doing well. But
yeah, you guys are killing it.
Yeah, that is a refreshing move, by the way, on the side of the creator to not just ask for the crowdfunding, but be so sure in the product. That's got to be inspiring in a way. Like to know that the product is being produced now, the end product, right? Shows confidence from the creative team that this crowdfunding is just a formality, right? Like,
well, you see so many Kickstarters where they struggle after succeeding, right? Where you're like, okay, they've got the money, and you think that that's the hard part, and then it's like, okay, well now it's time to actually make the thing. And like, I think I have a whiteboard over my where I get my mail of all of the Kickstarters that I'm waiting to still get, right? And it's like, oh, I paid for this one a year and a half ago, and it's still coming in. So we even had people in the comments say, hey, isn't this deadline that you've set for delivery really aggressive? And we're like, well, it's kind of already at the printers, and people don't even know how to take it. They're like, I don't know how to feel about an on-time Kickstarter delivery.
But let me just speak to you from other people who have backed Kickstarters before. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
that is an amazing thing that people are able to give you some of the funding that you need for the project, and then to not have to wait into the their golden years to receive their keyboard sleeve or their, you know what I mean?
Well, so it'll also make sure that the first expansion comes out on time, because that's all spec'd out, and we have the art. It still needs to go through testing and all those other things, but like the Fairest in the Land expansion is like it will be ready to roll out as long, and if the Kickstarter keeps ticking along, that will help make sure that the game doesn't die on the vine. Like we have this, if we have a really great launch, but then people are like, oh, I need another villainess, or I need another queen. Sorah, is this your favorite? Who's your favorite queen? Favorite villainess?
Mine's the evil queen right now.
Right, and so that's the one that is in the expansion. It's the.
Okay. Oh, that's right, because she's not out with the initial. So yeah.
No, she's in the Fairest. So we have to make sure Sorah's favorite.
Look how ahead of the game everybody.
Well done.
Yeah.
Look how ahead of the game everybody here is, right? That they're just now finishing up the Kickstarter, right? Or at least you guys still have 40 days on it, right?
37.
37 days left on the Kickstarter, and you guys already broke the goal almost 2 times over, and you're still going. I haven't looked at it in 10 minutes, so it might be cleared $1 million at this point. But you guys already have an expansion already in the pipeline and are already at the printer before the things. You guys are very professional about this. You guys are you're knocking this, all the pins that you want to push down to have a successful game you guys have done.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, no, thank you guys. I mean, you're the ones that are doing all the moves. I'm just a guy on the internet telling you good job.
Yeah, but you're acknowledging us, So.
Yes.
Yeah, well, for me, this part's super easy, and I'll do it every time. But I hope that this is a massive success for you guys. If you guys want to tell us, are this going to be something you can pick up in a website other than Kickstarter after it's released? Is it going to be in stores?
It should, yeah. So we'll have copies in theory, like everything works out. There's no weird typhoons or anything. We should have copies on hand at Gen Con, and we will be going through normal retail distribution. I should also make it clear we really appreciate retailers, and we have a retailer option on the Kickstarter where if you're a retailer, you can it's like a one-time pledge. Like you just pledge, like I think it's a $30 pledge. But what that does is it means you can shop us as a retailer. Like you can buy copies. That's just kind of like reserving your place in line to get copies for your store, so that local comic shops can also like benefit from the Kickstarter and make sure they get their copies at the same time and they're not running downstream of it and things like that. And they'll have access to our add-ons and stretch goals like the awesome playmats and Sorah's prints. I don't know where you print those, but they're the best prints I've ever seen. I just saw them.
I know.
YouTube, but those are gorgeous.
It's because of the paper quality. A lot of people go for thinner paper quality, and I don't play that game. I'm like, no. If the art's pretty enough, it needs to have really nice, thick paper stock, and everyone tries to go for shiny, and I go for matte because it's like, who wants to see like the light reflecting off of it? Then I can't see the art.
I just switched over from shiny to matte, and it's been a game changer.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you want people to see it from across the room, and you don't want them to see the Towers of Gondor.
The glare of the awful con lighting or something.
Right. So I just want to take a second and tell everybody out there that's listening to this, if you guys have a local game store and they like doing these types of board games, card games, things like that, go out there and get some variation. Tell them to come support this Kickstarter. So is there anything else you guys wanted to tell us about this?
Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up was we made a real effort to, and we talked about how we're planning ahead, where we'd like to keep coming out with more and more expansions, where we really wanted to find lots of different myths and legends and folklores. So we're pretty loose with the term princess.
That's true.
And so, for example, Dorothy Gale is not necessarily a princess that comes to mind, but she totally is.
That's right. She was Ozma made her an official princess of Oz in like the 4th Oz book, I think.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Gretel, however, we have no record of her ever being an official princess, but nobody wants to tell her.
But we have no record that she's not a princess
either.
Candy princess, whatever.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well.
For example, one of the soon stretch princesses that we may reveal, I got to learn an awful lot about different cultures and different myths that I had no freaking clue about. And so I remember Sorah sending me this myth with like a demon with a club and one leg, and I'm like, how the hell are we gonna make rules about this? But yeah, I learned a lot, and hopefully we can, people, like, the art's gonna be gorgeous, the princesses are really cool, people can kind of look a little bit and be like, oh, this is actually based off of this culture type thing. So
Sorah, do you want to talk about your princess that you sent over to us, the one that Rob was talking about? Because by then
so David and I had talked about making me into a card. I can't remember how that came about, but I was like, okay, cool, why not? So I kind of sat around and I thought, like, well, what can I do? And generally speaking, the way that we've been dealing with all the culture bending of the princesses and the characters is we're trying to land it. We're trying to have a foundation of, real life folklore or facts. And so, for example, the Cinderella, we have her as Egyptian, and that came from, me Googling around when I was doing research for design about one of the first Cinderella-esque stories ever told was a Greek story about an Egyptian woman or girl. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll make her an Egyptian, and there can be glass and sand and whatever. It made sense in my head. So but not all of them are necessarily based 100% in real life folklore. Sometimes it's a mishmash of cultures and things like that, which for me is super fun because then I get to get really crazy on the design. But I thought this was a really great opportunity for me to talk about some of my background. I'm half Korean, and I was raised on Korean folklore, and so juxtapose America, Western folklore. So my character is, I didn't realize that we're calling her a princess, but there's a term in Korea. They're considered goblins, and they're called tokebis, which they're kind of mischievous. They're not necessarily malicious. They can be bad. They can be good, but they like to mess around with humanity a lot and make a lot of deals and stuff. So they're not like bad, but they're not good either. And
Right.
so they're actually, I can't remember the exact reasoning for this, but they stem from inanimate household objects, like that are neglected, and then those turn in, like, I don't know what the moral of the story is for that. You need to sweep more. Yeah, so like literally pots and pans and brooms that have not been used can sometimes be inhabited by these tokebis, and then they turn into these little, I mean, I kind of drew myself a little pretty, but they're usually not pretty. Like a horn coming out their head, or a couple of horns.
You put the mask in, so
I did put the mask in. That was like my little, okay, I'll get away with that, but but they're not generally, like, they usually have like tusks, so they would probably look more along the lines of like an orc from like
I'm
World of
so
Warcraft.
curious about this right now.
I know. I can't wait to. I really
didn't draw myself that way, but anyway, so yeah, and they usually have, I can't remember the term, it's like gum something, but there's a magic hat that they wear that allows them like certain powers or whatever, and then they have usually a club which they bonk people over the head with or whatever. But there's like one-legged tokebis and two-legged, one-eyed tokebis. Like, it's kind of a vague myth, but it's like this general mischievous creature. So I was like, this will be fun to introduce Western audiences concept. So that's what I did.
That's really cool. I
Very
really
cool.
like the sort of different culture, like looking at the art, like how Briar Rose is obviously very Dia de los Muertos inspired.
Yeah.
At my work, I run a monthly D&D club for some homeschool kids.
Cool.
And half of my group is girls and half are boys. And especially the girls are really interested in different types of mythologies. They'll come in for the game and one of the girls will tell me about like all these Egyptian myths that she read about, and they just get really, kids get really interested in seeing different cultures or other stories, and it's very new to them.
I mean, that's sort of the thing for kids when they're young. They learn languages better. So this might be the perfect time for them to get into multiculturalism. Adopt it early. Don't get late in life and be like some of the people that exist in the world now that I will be vague and unspecific about.
Yeah.
See, that's more Thanos references. You got to be careful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that I think being having a lot of different cultures represented in a game like this, and being able for young kids to get into it without it being prohibitively complex, make this a good thing. It's not only an interesting game, it also teaches a valuable lesson, I guess, that there's interesting things all over and sort of be open to them.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Cool thing.
Yeah, we like, even with Sorah's, like she kind of said that they're mischievous, they're tricksters. Her princess is actually a princess and a villainess, depending on how you want to play it.
Yeah, she has 2 cards.
She has 2 cards, that's right. So
there's a villainous version of her because
that's so cool.
That's really cool.
Essentially our Loki. Like, like, is she going to be bad or good this game? Like, we don't know, so you get to pick. And so it has a modified art and a different power. And then she's not playable that turn. She's a villainess that is messing with the game. So I think one of her versions, she's a arcane trickster, and then the other one is she's the goblin queen. And she gets
so cool.
That is cool.
I get a hair dye job in the color. It's awesome.
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, Sorah. This is vaguely related, I guess, too.
Okay.
But so I noticed on your picture on the Kickstarter, you're holding a dachshund, and then you guys recently have a new card called what is it?
The Prince and the Pupper.
And I noticed that the pupper looks very similar to the dog that you're holding in your picture.
So I have, he's my service animal. I have crippling flight anxiety, but he's also like my baby too. So it's like, it's a weird. But anyways, so his name is Pepper. He's almost 2 years old. He'll be 2 in July. But because he goes to all the cons with me and he's at the shows and he sits either on me or under the table or whatever, he has his own little like fan following. Like I have an Instagram for him, but I don't like promote it. I just like if anyone asks, I'm like, this is where I put all my ridiculous photos for him. So I think it's only got like 100 and something followers. Like it's not a big deal. And like I said, I don't promote it, but I do post photos, you know, online and stuff. And like when I got him, it was such a harrowing experience. I think people like bonded with the journey it was to get him because there was a storm. He was stranded in Chicago. It was like this whole nonsense like tale of a journey. And so when I was coming up with layouts for David to approve for the charming cards, I gave him like 3 or 4 layouts, and he picked one of them, and then I was like, oh, I'm like disappointed you're not gonna pick the one. I just threw my dog into it for the lulz, and he was like, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna post this like loose thumbnail to Facebook and make everybody cry about what will never be. And so when I did that, everyone was like, oh my God, that would be so cool. So I showed that to David going, and so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's put Pepper in there. So I was like, yes. So now my dog has been immortalized.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Like the fan outcry for that. We want the flupper.
For my dog.
What is the Instagram? Just let me.
It's Pepper. It's all one word. So it's Pepper and Portillo, like the hot dog place in Chicago.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're gonna make this
Got
dog
it.
famous.
Following. You have a new
So
follower.
Sorah,
I feel like this interview has sort of gotten away from us.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Save us.
all right, so the game, right?
Yeah, super game mechanic.
All right.
Right.
Sorry. Okay, so what about this game in particular makes it different from other games? What do you think is if you had to give me a short elevator pitch, what do you think what's going to be written on the bottom of the box? The selling, the pitch.
Wow. I mean, we wrote something on the bottom of the box. I should look at that.
Well, no, I don't mean actually read off the bottom of the box. Maybe a little more expanded.
Let's start with Rob because he designed it.
Bastard.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big things here is that we really wanted to make it a different storytelling experience every time, and not a storytelling experience where it's, you know, there are games that are like Dixit and other things like that where it's like, oh, it's a storytelling game. No, we wanted people to be able to tell a story of the experiences they had through the rules, through the mechanics, and have it be unique every time, and not just because of RNG, right? Like you can play a game Pandemic and be like, man, we just got a really bum deal.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't the super succinct thing, but I think that's really like, we genuinely wanted you to tell a new fairy tale every time you played the game, and the story was told because of the way the mechanics work, because the way the rules work, because the way the abilities of each princess worked. Not just because, I mean, yes, there's still a little RNG because cards are shuffled and whatnot. And then people are just like, that was awesome. I want to try it again. And even if they try it with the exact same variables, where like the same villainess, the same layer, the same princess, you're still going to get a different story.
Right.
At least that was our goal.
For me, I think my goal when I started this was to make a game for people who don't normally have a game that's made in their reflection. Like that's something I really wanted to do. And like Sorah's addition of how diverse she wanted to make the cast, and just taking those kind of so for one, like I love fairy tales and princess culture, princesses and Disney, like I love all that stuff, but I also think there's room for other interpretations of that. And so to be able to do that in a way that takes something familiar and makes it exciting again, and then like just reflects back to that audience that I really do think is underserved. And after the years I've been going to Gen Con and seeing how diverse the audience is, I wanted to contribute to kind of expanding the games that are available for those people.
Fantastic.
Sorah.
Yeah. So one, I was going to piggyback off of that. I really like the I mean, when you initially pitched this to me, it was really the option of inclusivity. Like the fact that we were just going to have fun with it and just and you know make an effort of having that diverse reflection without it and making it, what's the word I'm looking for? Making it purposeful versus token like. And like we have like this monster list. I don't know if I was supposed to tell this, David, so whatever. We have like this monster list that David and I at the very beginning, we just started coming up with ideas and like, oh, we could do this and interpret it this way and blah blah blah, and like this can include this, and this list is ever long, like, and that's just the immediate fairy tales and characters that we thought of off the top of our heads, not even doing a deep dive. So you want to talk about prep work. I literally have concepts backed up for like, I mean, easily at least another 10, 12, playable characters. So, and I keep telling David, I'm just like, okay, cool. So when can I start on, this one and this one? And he's like, okay, well, we got to get to the Kickstarter first. I'm like, all right, fine.
Well, guys, the game looks awesome.
Yeah.
It looks really great, and I wish you guys all the success in the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Is there anything else you guys want to say in closing, just before we go? Anything that you definitely want to get out into the?
Well, I'm going to do the special thanks to the people who aren't on the call with us. So my wife Jessica and my brother Alex are part of. It's called the Tres Luchas, that's the production team. And so like they've been, especially my wife, has been super instrumental in making sure and like supporting the game and making sure that it gets made and like reviewing art with me and like testing and all that sort of thing. And then Mike DeVito and Kenny Welker over at Third World Studios, who have helped us close out the game, have been huge in just making sure that it's getting packaged and getting it out to everybody else. So those are my special thanks for the day. I don't want to overload it. It's not the Oscars, but I just want to make sure that
we don't have music, so
right. They can play me off. They'll just edit me out. So
we're gonna edit you off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously would love to thank my wife and my daughters, but really to make a broader thing, like we are making a game, whose stars are women, and it's kind of been the norm in the past to make a game about women in a room full of old white guys. And so we definitely want to reach out to all of them who we've asked to be like, hey, is this cool? Or what do you think about this? Or how would you go about doing it that way? And so that's helped us a lot because we try really hard, but sometimes we're bad at it.
To be clear, Rob's the white guy in the room.
Yes, I'm the white guy. Sorry.
I'm not the white guy.
Yeah, I'm already generalizing. Look how horrible I am.
No, that is we made sure that like our play testers and even just focus testing and getting people to like diversity check us, like, is this okay? Like, how are we doing? I think it's important that we don't assume things and that we ask the people that we are asking to embrace the game, we ask them ahead of time before the game comes out. And I know we're not going to get it perfect, and I know that there's going to be some things that people don't like, but hopefully if there is something that people understand that like Sorah said, we have piles of content that we want to get through, and I think our cast is just going to become more diverse, and there's subtle things in the game too. Like if you watch the trailer and look at the cards, we actually build a lot into the relationships and their biographies that is not obvious, but you might find out certain things about Snow White and Dorothy that maybe you didn't know as you're playing through. And so there's some cool stuff in the game. I'm really happy with how it came out, and I appreciate how much love that Sorah has put into the game, and Rob and these guys. And so it's just been a great experience.
Yeah, I just want to do really well so we can make more of them. Because I agree with Sorah. We have this giant list. Like, there's a couple in particular that I'm like I've even got the rules done. I play tested it. And I'm like, oh, we just got to get to that stretch goal or whatever it is, right?
We actually can't stop making content. It's like
well, I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. So you guys will have expansions for the next few years while
we're old and gray. I just wanted to do a quick shout out to Sanju.
Oh yes, thank you so much.
And I don't actually know how to say his last name, and every time I do an interview and say thank you, I'm always like, Sanju, I'm so sorry because I'm going to butcher your name.
He's been a hero.
Yeah, he's a machine, and he's the colorist of the project. And I came to him going like, hey, do you want to do this? And he was like, okay, sure. And absolutely stunning work. And like I said, he's a powerhouse of talent, and his scheduling, like, he just pumps work out. It's insanity.
Woo!
Yeah, sorry.
We should all give him a woo. Color artists are invaluable. Woo! Okay, well, thank you guys so much for taking the time and talk with us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. I mean, for us, we generally play D&D, but all of us are deep-seated gamers, and we play games all the time. When we get tired of doing our podcast and we need some time off, we go play another game. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we are, and that's what our listeners are, and we want them to hear about all the cool games that are coming out. And this one is definitely it definitely qualifies.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for making something awesome for everybody.
Thank you guys. This has been fun.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys later then.
Awesome.
Have a good night.
You.
Take care, guys.
All right.